Would you please give one of your standing ovation welcomes to Sabina Brennan?
That's one for Twitter later. Thank you very much. I'm going to introduce that into all of my talks. It's a wonderful idea. Okay, so I'm going to work you straight off, and I'm going to ask you a personal question, and I hope you don't mind. Put your hands up if you brushed your teeth this morning. Now keep them up if you intend to brush them again this evening. Brilliant. Now, no, I'm not done yet. Keep them up if you consciously did something for your brain health today. Okay, great. There are some hands around still up. You can put your hands down. More, actually, I will say, I do that at most of my talks, and there's a lot more hands up here than there are at some of the talks I give, so that's good. Now, I put the word consciously in because you may well have done something that's good for your brain health. You just didn't consciously incorporate it into your day, and that's something that I'm passionate about. The thing is, you are obviously really, really smart children because you learned from a very young age when you were about this high the complex concept of investment. Time spent now engaged in an activity reaps future benefits. You learned that if you brush your teeth daily, you increase the likelihood that you will hold on to them for as long as possible. You reduce your risk of tooth decay or of dental pain or needing fillings. As you grow older, you realize that there are other things that can help too. Flossing, going to see your dentist regularly, watching your diet. And then when you become an adult, you start to realize that even if you do all of those things, there's not an absolute guarantee. But you know that you're in a far better place than you would have been if you didn't develop a daily dental health habit. Well, the same applies to brain health. We know from research that there are things that you can do, free things, that you can incorporate into your daily life that can act as a buffer that may help to allow you to hold on to important brain functions like memory and attention for as long as possible, and may even reduce your risk of developing later life diseases like dementia. Now, I never even turned any slides on. I should click forward. Okay, so that was Did You Brush Your Teeth this morning? We've done that one. Okay, so we know now that there are risk and protective factors. So it's both possible and important to protect your brain in later life, and actually indeed across the lifespan. Age is the biggest risk factor for developing a disease like dementia. People often ask me, is it genetic? There is a genetic element, but it's small compared to lifestyle and environment influences. So what I'm interested in is modifiable lifestyle factors, the things that we have control over, the things that we can do something about. Now, I've split the pie here of modifiable risk factors across cardiovascular, psychosocial, and health behaviors, but you can split them a number of different ways. But cardiovascular, heart-related health is super important. Hypertension, so midlife high blood pressure increases your risk of developing dementia. If you do one thing when you leave today, go get your blood pressure tested, because once you manage it, the risk is eliminated. So it's poorly managed high blood pressure that's the issue. Type 2 diabetes, midlife obesity. In later life, that flips and becomes a risk. If you are underweight, you become frail and you may fall. So the important take-home message there is that you maintain a healthy weight. Depression increases your risk of developing dementia. That's complicated. We're not sure whether it's partly a precursor, but managing your mental health is hugely important. Social isolation and loneliness. I could talk for hours about social isolation and loneliness and how important it is for health, for brain health, and for reducing your risk of late life diseases. But today I'm focusing really on learning, but I will touch on social engagement. Smoking, just stop it. That's it, full stop. Excess drinking. There's some evidence that drinking some wine, in moderation actually is good for brain health. Low levels of physical activity. Again, I could talk for hours about that, but you have Professor Dawn here who's going to talk about it today. And I then will focus on low education and low levels of mental activity or cognitive engagement. Actually, after age are the single biggest risk, are one of the biggest risk factors for developing dementia in later life. So lifelong learning is hugely important. The protective factors are education, mental and cognitive activity, occupation. So that can be your job, but also whatever occupation you engage in, whether it's voluntary activity. I think we're going to hear from some people who are engaged in voluntary activities. Social connection is hugely important. And so you can get a double whammy, if you're engaged in something that involves learning, but that it involves other people, like men's sheds we're going to be hearing about today as well. The social connection is as good for you. It's really, really important. Exercise, again. And the best evidence so far in terms of diet is Mediterranean diet. So lots of colourful fruits and vegetables and oily fishes. Am I pointing at the right direction? Okay, so here's the $64 million question, as I put it. It's really a healthy lifestyle. We know from research that those with better heart health who've been more physically, socially and mentally active, who've adopted healthy eating habits, who don't smoke, who drink alcohol in moderation, are less likely, on average, to develop dementia. Now, you can do all of those things and still develop dementia. We're talking about on average. That's what the research is indicating. And it's what we call correlational research. It's just looking at lifestyle factors and increased risk for. So as one very prominent researcher in the field that I work in, Professor Yakov Stern, the way he puts it is, we have the ingredients but not the recipe. So we know the things that are good, but we don't know quantities or we can't quantify it. But the exciting thing is that our brain is constantly changing. And it's our behaviours, our experiences, our lifestyle choices that can shape it at any age. That's the wonderful thing. We used to think that the brain was fixed and set like concrete once you got to adulthood, but that's not true. You can shape your brain and change it at any age. What we do, and indeed what we don't do, influence how well our brain functions now, but not just that. It influences how resilient it can be when faced with aging, injury, or disease. So I'm going to play a little video for you now that I've made. I make a lot of little animated films that talk about all these things. They're all free, available online. There's lots of different websites, but if you go to my own website, sabinabrennan.ie, and click on the tabs, they will then take you out to the other websites. This is a little 2-minute film.
What can you do to keep your brain healthy? We all know high cholesterol isn't good for our bodies, along with high blood pressure and being overweight. But what you might not know is that not only can these health concerns shorten the life of your body, they can affect your brain function. The more scientists study our brains, the more they're finding that how well it works is intricately tied to the health of our body. For example, just 30 minutes of aerobic exercise 5 times a week can keep your brain sharp. Because physical exercise not only helps your heart, it can increase the size of your hippocampus, a part of the brain crucial to making memories. But that's not all. Physical exercise generates a chemical called BDNF, brain-derived neurotrophic factor, which acts like fertilizer for the brain, encouraging the growth of neural connections and new brain cells. So, obviously staying active is important, but not just physically active. You need to keep socially active as well, especially as you get older. Because there's growing evidence to suggest that people who can avoid getting lonely reduce their risk of cognitive decline, something we all agree is a good thing. But there's one last thing you need to do to keep your brain healthy. Keep it active. So, in no particular order, here are 3 top ways to keep your brain stimulated. Number 1, challenge yourself. The satisfaction you get from doing things slightly beyond your comfort zone actually changes your brain chemistry, making you feel more positive. Number 2, change yourself. Novelty helps your brain, so it's good to experience new things, take on new situations and meet new people. And number 3, learn something new. This encourages the growth of new brain cells and stimulates the connections between them, which has its own benefits, because stronger brain connections also help keep your brain healthy. So don't let age stop you from doing the things you love. Think young, because if you look after your brain now, keeping it active and engaged, it will make you proud for years to come.
And we chose juggling as an activity because there is scientific research around juggling and it increasing white matter in your brain. But that doesn't mean everybody has to go out and learn how to juggle. The point is learning, challenging your brain, novelty. Doesn't matter. It can be a musical instrument. It can be something you've always wanted to do. Just do it. That's the thing. Adopting a brain-healthy lifestyle is like investing in brain capital. It keeps your brain healthy now, but it also builds what we call cognitive reserves that you can cash in the future to help cope with or compensate for disease, damage, or age-related decline. So it's resilience. It's about building resilience. And our brain has the capacity for resilience, provided we give it this helping hand by living a brain-healthy lifestyle. So scientists call this resilience in the area of research that I work in, cognitive reserves. And it comes from, this is summarizing tons of research, it comes from the repeated observation that there's no direct relationship between the degree of brain pathology, the disease in your brain, or brain damage, and the clinical manifestation of that injury or disease. We heard about a wonderful gentleman earlier who had a stroke. What can be observed is 2 individuals can experience a stroke of the same magnitude, and one of them will have profound impact on their functioning while the other will have minimal impact. And it seems to be that those individuals who have minimal impact have cognitive reserves. They have an ability for resilience. We also now know that 25% of brains examined post-mortem that fulfill the criteria for a diagnosis of Alzheimer's disease, those individuals were clinically intact. So they had no symptoms. So they had Alzheimer's disease in their brain, but they didn't develop Alzheimer's dementia. And that's exciting, if we could push those numbers up. So it's that some people can retain better brain function even in the face of disease. And education and stimulating activities seem to be key to this. Education is the most broadly and consistently successful cognitive enhancer. It's better even than drugs and technology. Education can build our cognitive reserves at any point. I'm speeding up because I'm running out of time. Excuse me, I want to tell you very briefly about a study that was conducted in the Bronx, because I don't want people going away worried if you have low educational attainment, thinking that there's nothing you can do about that. That was a big concern. So what they wanted to look at in this study was education and stimulating activities, whether they interact together to boost cognitive reserve. So they looked at 488 older adults. It was the Bronx Healthy Aging Study. All of the adults were healthy at the start. During the course of the study, 101 of the adults went on to develop dementia. That gets me every single time I say this. Their unit of measurement, so like their dose of the pill, in the study, was 1 activity 1 day per week. And you can see up there, they're not complex activities, That delayed 1 activity, 1 day per week, delayed the onset of severe memory loss for 2 months in the individuals who had been diagnosed with dementia. That's a super investment in my book. And that was only 1 day per week. So the message to take home from that is never too late to engage in lifelong learning. Lifelong learning is linked to resilience, this resilience I'm talking about. The factors are also associated with lifelong learning. Level of education reach, engaging in cognitively demanding tasks, being socially active. Lifelong learning is linked to improved quality of life and well-being. It reduces social isolation, dementia risk reduction, and increases our chances that we can live independently for longer. I think I'm probably going to have to skip this one about neuroplasticity and just move on to my final slide. But the important thing to know is that neuroplasticity in our brain has the ability to change, and it really is learning that does that. So finally, learning generates new brain cells. It enriches our brain networks. It can open new routes that the brain can use to bypass damage. Our brain is built for learning and for change. It confers on us the ability to do tomorrow what we can't do today. Learning is not just for school, it's not just for college, it's not just for university. Learning is for living, learning is for life, and learning is not just for the young. Learning is for everyone. Thank you very much. Oh.